Hey, thank you for tuning in to this next episode of I Fight What You Fear with Richard Vega. I'm so grateful that you tuned in to hear today's show and our guest, my good friend, pastor and council member, Willie Davis. He has an amazing story, and I can't wait to share it with you because it's truly remarkable to watch or hear a man that's come from his background to evolve into what he is today. And he's tackled a lot of issues along his way. And so say hi.
Hello. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, brother.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. I've been waiting for this one. So I was excited when you were like, yeah, let's do it.
Man, well, I'm always good hanging out with you, Richard. So that's the way it is, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
So you grew up right here in Houston in a neighborhood, Sunnyside or Third Ward. I'm sorry, Third Ward, which is a historic neighborhood, and predominantly it's always been a black community.
That's right.
And just walk me through these early years of your life in the early 50s and 60s, because you came up during the civil rights movement. You were young.
That's right.
But you remember.
That's right.
We in the South, so
that's right.
You remember.
That's right.
Walk me through some of these things.
I'd be more than happy to. Let me first of all thank you for inviting me to have an opportunity to share, and I enjoy sharing my life. I really do, especially now that God has afforded me to serve in an office, a very high office in our city.
Amen.
As a council member. That's a blessing. Okay,
right.
So I get the chance to have input in whatever the administration of our city does. I am a native Houstonian. I was born in Houston. And born there in the 50s, right in the heart of what we call Third Ward, on Scott Street, and what we that time called the Gulf Freeway. We all called it the Gulf Freeway. But I was born there, raised in that community, and come from a very large family. There were 11 of us.
Oh, wow.
We had 11, and of course my mother biologically birthed 11, but she raised a stepson, and so it basically was 12. But I grew up in that community. As you know, it was tough during those times. I was born in the civil rights movement, as I tell people, and then I was raised up through the movement, and then I learned to live and raise my family after the movement. Right. It was tough times. I remember being taught by my parents, what to do when you went into stores, that blacks had to go to the back, whether it was a hamburger stand or whatever. And I came up through that in my early years. I grew up there on the part of Third Ward that also kind of connected with East End. And so many of my friends, brothers, sisters in the Hispanic community, because I went to Hispanic high school, Stephen F. Austin, and a lot of my friends, we all keep in touch even now. So that was a blessing as well, because I have a heart and an understanding of the fact that our Hispanic brothers and sisters has a place, Hispanic American citizens have a place and a voice. So I grew up there in Third Ward. I went off to school, first of my mother's children. I'm number 4 in the 11 lineup,
wow.
But I'm the first one to be able to go to college.
Nice.
And I thank God for that. My older 2 brothers and older sisters, they all looked at me like, man, somebody got to represent. So it's you, Yeah. So it fell on me, and I went to college. From there, I volunteered from college because my father had an accident. He was a truck driver for Kroger grocery chain, and he had an accident and almost took his life. He was in a coma for about 3 or 4 or 5 days. So I was at school at Sam Houston State in Huntsville, and of course, naturally, I wasn't going on a student loan, and it was money out of the pocket. That's how we did it. Well, I didn't want to put that burden on the family because my dad was down. So I decided to volunteer for the United States Army. We were still in Vietnam. It was the early 70s. And so I joined the Army and went in and served with the 1st Special Forces Green Beret in Okinawa, Japan, which is kind of like the stopping point before you go into Vietnam. And by the grace of God, came out, finished my military service, and then came home. I got out, served my years in the Army, came out and finished my education, and worked in Houston, and later became a pastor. And in 1986 was my first pastorate, in ministry, and I adore it and really admonish it, Pastor Vega. And the reason why, because I became like the first of everything. I was the first of my mother's children to go to college. I was the first of my mother's sons to ever, any of them, to go in the military. I was the first to become a preacher. And on my matriarch and patriarch side, no one had ever been a preacher. I mean, I have no uncles, I had no grandfather, no nobody, right? So I had to learn it by sitting under others. And I had a great pastor leader by the name of Curtis Wallace, who was out of a little small town in Texas called Paris, Texas. And then he moved to Houston and became the pastor here at the Lily Grove Baptist Church. And I sat under him, and he was the one that recommended me to my first pastorate. And I served for 20 years at that one church.
Wow.
At Greater St. Paul Baptist Church on the corner of MLK and Yellowstone. And I served there 20 years, went to Chicago for 4 years, and served a very historical church in Chicago, South Side. Matter of fact, it was right next to the White Sox baseball stadium.
There you go.
So it was good,
Yeah.
So along with that, God has afforded me, Pastor, the opportunity to see all sides of what I deem is the highest level of all that I do and have done, is to serve as a pastor, a man of God, preaching and teaching the gospel to the salvation of the lost and the least and the left out. So I'm now serving as a city council member at large, which means I don't represent just a district. I represent the whole city,
How many people are in our city that you represent?
That would be, we are close to 3 million.
Ooh-wee.
Man,
Come on,
man, that's tough stuff, man. Let me tell you, I've been there 1 month, almost 1 month, and it seems like I've been there 6 months.
I know you're a busy man
Oh,
since you
my
won, bro.
God,
That's why I've
man.
been leaving you alone, because I'm like, man, I know he's busy, because you are you answer everyone's call, because it's naturally as a pastor.
Yeah.
And you're used to people wanting your time. You're used to people wanting you to show up.
Absolutely.
And so you've already been serving in that sphere, and now you're in this role, and it's like, okay, but where you're probably finding out the city a lot bigger than what you thought.
You hit the nail on the head, man. I'm discovering, and interestingly that you said that, but you're absolutely right. I remember before I got really, sworn in before the inauguration, naturally when you win, then within the next day, we were doing orientations. We was down at City Hall and early in the morning, all day, listening to all the department heads and everybody. And when I got there, of course, I didn't have the regular ID that you have that gets you in and walk in, right? Because officially, you the candidate elect. So you're not really, so the other person's still in the seat. So when I would go to City Hall, it was very interesting. Everybody down there, the security people and the regular people walking around working for everybody. And they'll say, are you Pastor Willie Davis? Yeah, I am. Yeah, man, we glad you here, man. We just so excited that you're going to be the member. And I'm just kind of like, what? The idea was, here we got a pastor who's going to sit on City Hall at that half horseshoe table. And it said much to my spirit, like, wow, man. So the people, even there in our city government, is looking to the hope of somebody who they deem respectfully as a man and a person of faith and of God to serve on the city council. So, and I really appreciate that, because it keeps me in check because I'm not changing who I am just because I'm a council member.
Right.
Because people would ask me, Pastor Vic, they said, now, Willie, what do we call you? Do we call you Pastor, Council Member Willie Davis, or do we call you Council Member Pastor Willie Davis? I said, well, whatever you decide to call me, I'm going to answer.
Ain't that right?
So it don't really matter. If you call me, I'm going to answer.
I'm just here to serve.
Yeah, but you're right. It's second nature to me.
It is. And not every pastor can fill that role, right? We know that. And I've known you for some years, and you're always out there serving, and always, I mean, you were all over the community anyways, and just willing to serve and be a voice and really just speak for a lot of different issues that we have in our city.
Yes.
I look at your life, and I know we kind of skimmed over that, but what hospital were you born in?
I was actually not born in a hospital. I was born in a house.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So my mother didn't make it, man. She
said, no, this one's coming now.
This is coming right now. And even that is a phenomenal situation because I was born in August in 54, and my mother, on the morning I was born, and I went back and checked the record, like the day and everything, and it was on a Sunday morning. I was born.
And you're a preacher.
And I'm a preacher today.
Imagine that.
Go figure that. Go figure
it's
that.
Sunday, I'm ready.
That's right. Number 4. I'm the number 4 child, right? And so my mother calls my oldest brother. His name was Robert. She said, Robert, and the midwife is in the room. I done been born. And my mother calls my brother in the room and said, hey, Robert, come in. He comes in there and she says, here's your birthday gift. I was born, my oldest brother and I was born on the same day.
Wow.
So I didn't make it to the hospital, man. My mother had me right there, and I owned Scott Street.
Wow.
In the Guthrie Way.
Come on.
That's right.
That's an awesome story.
It is a tremendous story, man. And that's been my hood all my life. I watched it change. I watched it grow. And I came up, passed through some hard times.
Well, I mean, you grew up during the civil rights, man. And we're the South here, man. So segregation was here.
It was here.
Big
Big
people
time.
don't realize, we drive by the local schools around here is Dobie High School. They don't realize, there was segregation.
Yeah.
They had color sinks and,
right.
white sinks.
That's right.
It was real here.
It was real.
People don't realize that. And this is your generation.
That's right.
This is stuff that your family saw.
That's
this
right.
is what you experienced.
That's right.
You knew what neighborhoods not to go to growing up.
Absolutely.
Right. And it was, and that filtered into, your kids. Right. And then, but our world has changed, and Third Ward has definitely changed. It does not look. The other day, my son said, "Hey, Dad, I was in Third Ward today," and I said, "Baby, you was not in Third Ward. Don't even say it like that, baby." I remember when it used to. I mean, it was zombie land back there.
It was something. We used to, and interesting you say that, Pastor, because right on Scott Street, that was our community. We played baseball in the street. We made basketball goals out of bicycle rims, that kind of thing, right? Oh, yeah. We didn't have a park. We had nowhere to go to play basketball and football. We literally played football on the feeder road of the Gulf Freeway.
Wow.
Now go imagine. Back then the Gulf Freeway wasn't as wide as it is today.
Right.
It had a lot of wide feeder road, right? And it was grassy. And we would, the whole gang of kids in the hood, as we call it, we would play football on the side of the freeway. I mean, and cars is going up and down, and some guy's running on a pass, and he throws the ball and he catch it, man, and he got the car, that kind of stuff. I mean, literally. Yeah. And back then, I can remember that we would play out there, and that was really the activity we had. And whites would drive down the feeder road and use explicit name, calling us the N-word and throwing glass bottles at us, And I was younger as my brothers were older. My oldest brother was 7 years older than me, and my next older brother was 6 years old. So I was the little fella coming along, but I experienced all of that. Yeah, I experienced all of that. Riding the bus. We knew back in the day, we knew the instructions. When you got on the bus, you go to the back of the bus. We had the signs, blacks in the back and that type of thing. And we knew what to do, so we didn't kick against it and that type of thing. But you're absolutely right. That was the time I grew up in it and moved into transition after the civil rights movement, 1964. And we start seeing some of the changes, so we had to graduate into there, you see. So, yes, I mean, for me, my eyes have seen it all, and I have to say what a great change it is. One of the things I did interesting, you mentioned that about your son, who said, Third Ward. But when I came out of the Army and began my family, all of my children, because at the time I didn't live in Third Ward and moved outside of that particular community, and but all my children, I would take them to Third Ward. All my children, I would take them there, and they would go down there and they'd see, and I said, this is the neighborhood that me and your brothers, your uncles and aunts grew up in, my brothers and sisters, and I would always take my children there. They were like, Dad, we going to Third Ward? Yeah, we going to Third Ward. Yeah. But I wanted them to see. I wanted them to feel some of the atmosphere of the community that I grew up in. Now, unfortunately or fortunate, whichever way you look at it, much of that community no longer exists.
No, they did a regentrification there.
They did.
Heavily. And, I'm all for leaving things some historic,
Yes.
But, when you grew up, I love what you said, your mom and dad, because there was that nucleus of a family. And then you transition to the 70s and 80s where we have a crack come in.
That's right.
And really destroyed Third Ward and into all the way into the 90s.
It did.
And I remember, in the early 90s and going back there, because right there by the neighborhoods. And it was just, there was people walking around cracked out. It was very, very tough community. And you saw what that drug abuse has done to your community.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And you've really seen a lot in your life because there's a lot of history there because of when you were born. From going to school to the back of the bus. My grandfather said, he's still alive today. He's 89 years old, and I've been visiting him a lot lately. And we just talk about history in the neighborhood. He's always lived right there in East End. And so we were talking, and we were just talking about the buses and the bus rides back then. And I said, "Did you sit up in the front?" And that he said, "No." He said, we sat with the brothers.
That's right. That's right.
I was like, really? He goes, yeah. And
That's right.
I said, well, what did that look like? He said, we had our own stops. He says, we didn't get off where the whites got off.
No, absolutely not.
He said, I said, so did they have Latino stops? And he's like, no, you got off at the brothers stops.
That's exactly right.
And I said, really?
That's
he said,
right.
yeah. I said, man, I didn't know that part of history, And that's right here in Houston, in
Texas.
the neighborhood.
That's exactly right.
And he said, oh, yeah. He said, man, he said, and we looked out for each other. And
Yes.
I was like, that's what's up.
Well, and let me add this too about our Hispanic brothers and sisters, because I know much is not said, but they went through the struggle of what we went through, because they were not accepted, as we were not accepted in certain areas. And he's right. My mother and father were people that were born and raised in rural Texas. Navasota, Texas is where my mother and father was from, born and raised. And every year down in Navasota, Texas was cotton fields. And my mother and father, they picked cotton, and back in those days, my family grew up on what they called the farms. After, of course, slavery was over, it's no longer plantations of slaves, but in a sense, there were plantations because That's the way the people lived. You lived on the. If you didn't own your own farm, then you worked on the farm for somebody else, which was going to be a white farm owner, and they had acres of land. I mean, because to grow cotton and you got to have thousands of acres, and so that's where my family worked. My uncles, my aunts, my cousins, all of them grew up there and working on farms. It was called the Moore Brothers. In Navasota area, it was cotton called the Moore Brothers. Harry Moore, Tom Moore was a dad with many sons, and they all had so much land that was given, right? So my family grew up on the farm. They went to the school that was on the farm. But guess what? The blacks and the Hispanics lived on the farms right there. They had their grocery store. When you would go to the store, if you needed rice or beans or whatever, you go there and you sign your name, and they deduct it from the money they say they paying you, which the books never was never balanced, right?
Right.
But those are my roots. Now, I missed it by that much. My 3 siblings were born there in Navasota. I was born in Houston. That's when my mother and dad transitioned, because my dad was a truck driver. But so you're absolutely right. Those were the days, and I saw all of that. All of that is who I am. That's what shaped and molded me as to who I am. That was also the teaching from my household, to be, to do better, to accomplish something. And just the point I want to make, that you said something was very critical. Back in the 60s, by the time we hit the 60s, I'm in elementary school and preparing to go into middle school, right? I remember the time when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, 63. We were living there in Third Ward. I remember all of that. And then during the years when Dr. King got assassinated, I was in middle school. But when I got to high school, I remember growing up there in the Third Ward community, and all of my friends and all of us growing up. So as I became this model person that our family got behind to make sure that I, became the first to get a higher education, I never forget that the day I left to go to college, I bought a car. I worked that summer and bought a car. And so I was leaving, and everybody was just a big gathering, celebration. Our little brothers going to college and whatever. And my younger brothers and sisters were all coming up, and they were all excited. Our brother going to college. Well, my oldest brother got in the car with me. And when I got ready to leave, packed up my little stuff, and I said, "Bro, where you going?" He says, "I'm going with you. Drive the car." And I go, "Man, what you mean? I got to drive 76 miles out the city, man. What do you mean you're going with me?" "Listen, man, drive the car. I'm going with you." My oldest brother rode with me to Huntsville, Texas, did not have a car to follow me there, none of that. So he hitchhiked back to Houston because he wanted to be with me when I went to college so that he could be sure that I was safe. So he picked my roommate. He says, "I'm going around and I'm going to pick my brother's roommate to watch over my brother." And interestingly, it's a story. He went out and picked the guy that was 6'6".
Made sure you were protected.
And I'm like, he says, he brings the guy over, and this guy says, "I'm Walter McBride." The guy was an ex-military Army guy, man.
Wow.
Yeah. And my brother, that's what family, when you talk to my family, I could talk about family. I could talk about how the unit of family stick together because we protected each other. We looked after each other. And my life could have turned a different direction because in my hood, drugs start coming in.
But prior to that, though, the black family was strong.
It was very strong.
Until drugs.
Exactly.
And the money-making machine of
yes,
prison
sir.
systems.
Yes, sir.
That's the truth.
That's right.
So, because people got to understand, blacks, and Latino families, you know, I didn't grow up with a father.
Right.
But and then my even my cousins, you know, their uncle, I mean, my uncle was in prison all of our lives, 16, 17 years. Drugs, right?
Yeah.
So you know, but prior to that, like, it's family. Like, if I look at my grandparents' generation, family.
Family,
you know,
man.
my mom's generation, family.
Family, that's right.
And then now the drug scene comes in.
That's right.
In the late 60s and 70s.
That's right.
And just literally just tore the communities up.
It did.
You know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you have such a rich history of going through all that. Let me ask you a question. Because you've seen all this, and as a black man, you've been able to witness, I mean, some really great transitions in life. As a black man who's grown up in a very racial era, to where, I mean, you were just hated by playing football by people driving by. Period. I mean,
That's right.
It was the times.
It was the times.
Has anything stopped you from accomplishing anything today in America because of the color of your skin?
No.
So you're an elected official in the largest county in the state as a black man. Now, how could that be possible?
Well, it can be possible because of the people, black and brown leaders, who fought for the fact that one day our sons and daughters would have the respect and be, you know, looked upon, as Dr. King said, and judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And so we were in that era, the way that I grew up and the way that my parents before me grew up, and the struggles that they went through in order to assure me that I could do better. And so they always planted in me, you could do whatever you want to do. Once the support and the direction of the country started changing, then I was one that says nobody's better than me and I'm better than nobody.
Mindset.
And so, yeah, that was my mindset.
Awesome.
And so everything that was made available to me because of the people before me, you know, I said, then I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's what I did. I could have chosen to go to a black university, but I chose to go to a white one. You see? So I was always the person that would always take the challenge.
And because that's a challenge.
Yeah, that was a challenge.
You know, people out there that is going to watch this, listen to it, you got to understand the times and you got to understand the community. And we Houston was in the South.
That's right.
Time. And so for a black individual to go to a white college,
oh, man.
and it's still probably a high ratio of whites that can still go to school there.
Yeah.
That's impressive, man. I don't know what you experienced there.
Well, I did. I tell you, that's a whole nother story, because I remember giving you one. I was, now, interestingly, again, you want to talk about Psalms 37 says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
And that could mean in a lot of areas of life, not just the preachers. But listen, I started at an early age being interested in politics. I don't know why. No one in my family was ever interested in politics. I wanted to be an attorney, wanted to be a lawyer by profession. So I majored in government and political science.
Wow, did you really?
I literally majored in government. I know a lot of people don't like, Willie, you did what? I majored in government and political science.
Okay.
Went to school in government and political science. And I never shall forget, when I got to Sam Houston State, the classes were huge. You know, like you go into a class, there's like 50 kids in this class, 60, you know. It's college, you know, a big auditorium. And in one of my government classes, I mean, you could count blacks and browns on one hand, you know. We would just break it into the school. You with me? So I remember sitting in a class and the professor brought up the subject of politics by party preferences and whatever. And me being there saying, hey, I'm a student here. I have a voice. I raised my hand, and I gave my comment. And the professor in the class laughed at me, predominantly whites, and they laughed at me, And I just stood my ground, And they said, well, the professor was like, well, what would give you that idea that something like that could transpire and whatever? So I said, well, it's like everything else. In time, we gonna see, and you will see changes of that nature. So I went through that, and then on top of that, my grading of my paper was different. I mean, I went through all of that, right? But let me tell you the goodness of God. I went to Sam Houston State University, and my oldest child was a daughter. My oldest daughter, growing up, and when she decided to go to college, never put an emphasis, I want you to go to UTAM or Texas Southern, never said anything to her. So when we got her prepared and she, one day I said, well, daughter, where you going? Dad, I'm going to Sam Houston. You going to Sam Houston? Yeah, I'm going to Sam Houston. I said, okay. My daughter majored in education in Sam Houston State University. Just recently, my middle daughter, my granddaughter, her oldest, just graduated last year from Sam Houston State University.
Wow.
Now that's 3 generations, not by my direction.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, look at how God did that as a seed sown. It is true. Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap it. So I've reaped the benefits not only of what I did to face those things,
Right.
but I sowed it, and it reaped up in my own child, and then in my grandchild, and whoever else after that.
Yeah.
So, but no, Pastor, you're right. It was tough, and so I never felt like there was nothing I could not do.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, you were a black man
Yes,
that was able to go to a white college.
that's right.
I mean,
That's
so
right.
nothing stopped you.
Nothing stopped me.
It amazes me, how some of these young people think, is there racism in the world? Yes. They always think it's always the white person that's
Yeah,
racist, right?
they do,
But
they
yet
do.
they don't look at their own, right?
That's right.
I can look in my neighborhoods, I can
That's
look
right.
in your neighborhood,
That's
I can
right.
look in the Asian community.
That's right.
Racism is racism. It's a hard issue and a sin issue,
That's
right?
right.
So
It
that's
is.
what it is.
That's what it is.
And that has to be dealt with.
Yes.
But there's nothing today in America, the color of your skin, your last name, that can stop you
That's
from
right.
anything. I mean, if there was in America a time, yes, it would have been your generation and prior, right? That would have been the stop limit because of everything that way it was then. But there's been, when the civil rights movement came in, and they broke those barriers, and you were able to have integration of schools, and it seems like it just started thriving, like for
did.
people of color, and a lot of whites wanted it as well. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize that,
Yeah.
but they wanted this because they were probably all rooted in Scripture and understood it was wrong.
Yeah.
But the truth of the reality is, though, if we look at Abraham Lincoln, he had blacks in the White House.
Yes, it did.
I mean, that's true. And there was blacks in the White House all the way up until there was a Democrat president.
Probably Woodrow Wilson.
He changed it.
He changed it.
He changed it and removed all the blacks out.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even realize that history.
Yeah.
Like, so if you just go and look at all those different presidents that had blacks in the White House working on staff, not just, whatever you might think in your head, these were very strategic people. In fact, they were in Congress.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
as Republicans. Now, you weren't a Republican.
No.
You were a strong Democrat at
That's
one
right.
time.
I sure was.
I mean, and you were a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And what happened? I mean, why the switch?
Well, because it's easily for me, and that was a switch because some of it, the truth of it is, and I think it's generally the story of most Black Americans as well as Hispanic American, Latino Americans, we all have been, basically guided to believe that being a Democrat is the right thing to do. Being a Democrat is going to be beneficial to me as a black and as to you as a brown. But what we come to realize is that that was against much of our faith and what we were taught and the values we were taught, because black America for years after slavery voted Republican. They were Republicans. They voted all the time for Republicans because we believed in independence. We believe in our own ownership, our own land, our own, business and all. That's how we thrive.
Well, hey, Pastor, hey, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, man, it was a joy.
You're awesome, man. You're a great friend of mine.
Yes.
And, tell people how they can reach out to you or just get in contact with you.
Yeah, just reach out to me. If you want to reach me, you can always call City Hall of Houston. And it's easy to get to me. And my email address is Councilmember at Large, position number 2, Willie Davis. And you just go to willie.davis at HoustonTX.gov. Willie.davis at Houston, HOSTONTX.gov. And of course, you can always, reach out to me at our church. We call it the Palm Church. It's McGregor Palm Community Baptist Church, a.k.a. the Palm Church. And we're located at 11410 MLK Boulevard. 11410 MLK Boulevard in Southeast Houston. We're not far from the CT Church. And my good friend and pastor, thank you for having me, my friend.
Awesome. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope it was inspirational. I hope you shared this story with your friends and somebody that could really benefit from it. Remember to like, follow, and share the page and continue to help us promote it. You take care. Go out there, be more than a conqueror. God bless.
Be blessed.
Man, thank you.
Amen.